All right, good morning. Today is Monday, the 27th of February. Hold on. Morning, Grant. We're just starting. So again, I'm taping. Today is Monday, the 27th of February. And what we're going to do is something different this week, and that is we're going to go into Bootstrap. All right. Again, as has happened several times this semester, I had people contacting me this weekend. I don't think it was because the homework was that hard, but maybe it was the volume. I don't know. But I've decided to give people until midnight tomorrow to get all the homework in. All right. And again, the plan is today I'm going to go over some Bootstrap fundamentals with you. We're going to build a site. It's probably going to look terrible. All right. And then tomorrow, what we will do is I'm going to basically go back and rebuild my portfolio for you. All right. And I'm going to rebuild it using Bootstrap. And you can follow along. You can build yours. You can build another file. It doesn't really matter. All right. And we'll see where we are at that point. There actually is supposed to be a Bootstrap test. At a minimum, I will give you Thursday and Friday to work on it in class, possibly even Wednesday. And again, it's not that it's that hard, but it's the stuff that we do in here is different. Some of it is automated, where we've done certain things in the past, and you've had to learn to do this and you've had to learn to do that. The biggest difference is going to be right now, you're going to have to learn what class to call because something has already been written to do it for you. All right. So with that said, I'm going to do two things. And that is, first of all, I'm just going to come in and once I close everything, there we go. I'm going to create a new folder that's just going to be called Bootstrap Example. All right. There'll be nothing in it right now, and that's totally fine. So Bootstrap Example, and I'm going to open it up inside of Visual Studio Code. There it is. And as you can see, again, there is nothing in it. All right. So the first thing to do then, when you want to start to learn Bootstrap, is to go out to the website, which again is getbootstrap.com. All right. If you click down right here, you'll notice that they even have things in here for earlier versions. I will tell you that one of the biggest changes was when they went from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4. It was a big change. And even 4 to 5 is a big change. And the reason that it's a big change in recent times, so to speak, from 4 to 5, is what Bootstrap has decided is that you no longer needed to bring in jQuery, which again, it's a JavaScript library, which we're going to talk about in the coming weeks. And it may not sound like a big thing, but it pretty much is. All right. Now, when you come up here, there's going to be a few things to look at up on top, such as if you want to know more about history and the like, you can go to their blog and you can read different things. I'm not going to spend a second on that. Once we get started here, and once you start working with Bootstrap, you'll notice there's a thing here that says themes. And they have some built-in themes that you can use to do certain things. All right. I'm not going to talk about those either. I will mention, though, that there are plenty of sites out there that have free Bootstrap themes. All right. As far as how things are set up, one of the ones that I use or have used in the past is called Boot Swatch, BOOTSWATCH.com, Boot Swatch. And as you can see, free themes for Bootstrap. And there's a whole bunch of them here. All right. And they set up colors and a few other things. All right. Again, I'm just showing you a couple things right now. All right. I think I mentioned this last week, but on the off chance I did not. Prior to really version 5 of Bootstrap, really, I think pretty much in versions 2 and 3 of Bootstrap, they had some icons that were okay. They weren't great, but they were okay. And then in version 4, basically the switch was made to, hey, use Font Awesome. They've got a lot more icons and they're a lot better. Well, that's gone back and changed again in version 5, and the icons have been very much improved in Bootstrap 5. And you can see here, this is just, I mean, I'm going through it here. I'm not even there now. I'm halfway through. So you can see how many built-in icons there are as you work your way through here. You can still use Font Awesome if you decide that you don't like the icons that are being shown here. All right. Examples we'll take a look at, not right now. And notice with all these examples in here, as it says, you can download the examples. You can also download the associated source code. All right, this is an open source type of project. All right, what I'm going to do though is I'm going to go over to Docs right there. All right, and as you can see, it says get started with Bootstrap. There's a lot of stuff you can read in here. I'm going to recommend that you don't spend a lot of time reading the stuff in here. It's not that it's bad documentation, just the opposite. But again, it's always been my philosophy that you're going to learn more by doing. And, if you just sit there and you create a dummy project for yourself and you put some stuff in it, I think at least you're going to be better off doing it that way than you are sitting and reading a bunch of documentation. Now, I'm going to go to the quick start in just a moment, but before I do want to mention that the next thing that's here says download. All right. And there probably are at least 3 to 6 different ways that you can download Bootstrap. I want you to understand that. All right. The first one says compiled CSS and JS. That basically what that will do is it will allow you to bring those files right into your program. But since they've already been compiled and since they've already been minified, you cannot change them. All right. So if you decided that you wanted to go in and change the Bootstrap code itself, you couldn't this way. If you brought in the source files, again, most of these that are in here, I'm not, build tools, etc. It says compile Bootstrap with your own ACID pipeline by downloading our source SAS. I don't know much more about this. I've never used it. The examples, as it says, you can download those. All right. Now, download this CDN via JS Deliver. Well, this is their version of using a content delivery network and using it rather than with cdnjs.com like I showed you. You can basically just copy in this here and this here and bring it in. Since they are both using CDNs, content delivery networks, you do need an internet connection if you want to use those. I've used those before. Package managers. This won't make a lot of sense now, all right? But we will be using NPM extensively in your fourth semester class. I'm sorry, your third semester class. So Grant, for example, you are scheduled at least to take in summer the AWD1111 class where you use NPM, the node package manager. I'd say that's probably a good 50% of the class. All right, so you'll learn a lot about it there. But just so people can get used to this, what I am planning on doing, or hopefully we'll do it tomorrow, and I'll have to go back myself and review how to do this, is when I get done creating my electronic portfolio that I'll create in Bootstrap, I'm going to show you how you can fairly simply use NPM, the node package manager, and put it out on GitHub pages so that the world can look at it. All right. And we'll look at that, like I said, not right now, but just so you know. There's really two big package managers. One is NPM, the node package manager. The other one is Yarn. I don't know if Yarn stands for something or not, but there's other ways, as they're showing you in here, that you can bring this in. you'll notice that the last one says NuGet. I have never installed Bootstrap directly using NuGet. I have used it in accordance with NuGet, but the reason I'm bringing that up is the class that you take in your last semester here, AWD1115, which is database-driven web development 2. We use NuGet a lot in that class. So the stuff that you're seeing here isn't going to go away, is what I'm telling you. All right, so I'm going to go back up to the introduction here, and I want to show you a couple things. All right, the first is, it says you can create a new file, all right, and then put this in, and you can do that. Just to show you, I'm going to put this in here. So I'm going to grab, in fact, click on the clipboard to copy everything. And I'm going to just literally go and bring it in. So they want it basically put in as an index.html file. So we'll do that. So new file, index.html. Now we're used to hitting the exclamation point and tab, which is totally fine. But they're having it put it in like this. It's really, really similar. It's really, really similar to what we have been doing. We may have another meta tag or whatever when we do it, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. And when you look at it right now, okay, all it is there is an H1 tag in here that says hello world. There is no repeat, no bootstrap in this example. And if I run it, so if I do a file, save all, and I run this, you opening it up in live server, not going to surprise you. There it is. All right. And it's at 100%. There it is. There is a certain font that was provided, and it was provided basically by the browser I'm using, which is Chrome. They've got it set up so that it has a certain amount of padding, margin, etc. But it's all the browser default stuff. All right. So kind of keep that in mind right now. That's what it looks like. But if I come back over here and now include, okay, now include the link in here. Okay, you can see how big these links are. So I'm going to grab these, in fact, let's do it this way. I'll copy this in. All right. And I'm going to come back to my program, but I'm going to make an index2. So let's make another file here, and we'll call this, in fact, let's call it bootstrap.html. All right, and then let's paste this in. Now, the difference between these two is we have linked to Bootstrap, and that's the Bootstrap CSS file, and we've linked to the Bootstrap JavaScript file. We can leave that file there, or we can move it up to the top, put it above or below this line here in line 7, and put the word defer in there. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. All right, but again, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go and bring it up in live server. Now, here's the other one, and here's this one. All right, this one right here, let's see. That is 100%, and that is 100%. You'll notice, or hopefully you'll notice a couple things. All right, the first of which is it's a different font. Okay, and the font size is a little bit bigger in here as well. So it's already started to provide a little bit of stuff for us. Okay. All right. Now, if they talk about popper in here, just so you know, and you probably have seen this already, if you've ever gone out and you've been someplace on a website and right mouse clicked, and you bring up what's called a context sensitive menu like this, all right? Some of that stuff is done using popper, or if you right mouse click and you bring up what's called a modal dialog box, that's usually done using popper. I'm not going to worry about popper right now. All right, it's just another JavaScript library that you can bring in if you need it. We're not going to worry about it. All right, so they say there, open the page in your browser of choice to see your bootstrapped page. All right, it says you can now start building Bootstrap, and that's what we're going to do in just a minute. by creating your own layout. And notice it's all hyperlinked, adding dozens of components and utilizing the examples that are in here. Now, if you decide that you don't want to do it that way, there's yet another way you can do it. And that is, I could bring in this file right here, and I can bring in this file right here and put them in to right here, and it'll basically look the same as what I've just done. All right. In many ways, I don't know if this is an attempt to be all things to all people. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but they give you, they meaning the people who have brought you Bootstrap, a lot of different ways of doing the same thing. All right. Okay. Then the next steps, what they're saying in here is you can go in and start reading the stuff that's in here. All right. And it says, you want to know about JavaScript and Popper, etc. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's in here. All right. Now, I do want to mention one thing. We have brought in, you've already seen this, but we have brought in here, right there in this link, that's Bootstrap. That's Bootstrap CSS. If we decide that we're going to come in here, and let's say we are, I'm going to put in a folder here called CSS. And in that folder, I'm going to add a new file that I'm going to call styles.css. All right. And I'm just going to put in something cheesy for right now, but I'm going to put in body, background, red. All right. We'll remove that in just a minute, but just so there's something in there. Okay. And I'm going to do a file save all. Well, if I want to use that in my Bootstrap file here, I have to come in and put it below the Bootstrap one. All right. So again, I'm going to put in here CSS/styles. You'll know right away whether or not it works because the background should turn red. It did. So it appears as though everything is working. So what I've shown you here, and it's not a great thing, but that I'm able to use both Bootstrap's CSS and my own CSS. All right. I've been using this color a lot lately, and that's blanched almond, just because it's seems like things actually appear on there and they look a little bit nicer, in my opinion. So now that's what I have. All right. So with that said, let's jump in and start looking at some actual Bootstrap stuff that we may be interested in using. So let me close a few of these here. All right. And this one as well. Okay. Where you'll probably spend a lot of your time in here as you start going in and you start working your way through here, all right, is a good place to start really are these components that are right here, all right? You can look at components as kind of like being widgets. And if you go, well, what the heck is a widget? Well, when you think about it, we had a chapter that we went over in our book, and that chapter was on forms. And on forms, we learned different kind of form components you could put in. Text boxes, labels, buttons, radio buttons, check boxes, etc. And a lot of that kind of stuff you're going to find in here. Now, not everything, but a lot of it you're going to find in here. All right. You're also going to end up, when you want to create a form, and we're going to do that in just a minute, by going into the forms section. All right. And the layout one is one you'll want to look at too. We're going to look at this before class ends because I want to talk to you about grid. I want to talk to you about columns. I want to talk to you about breakpoints. All right. And I'll notice there's some customizable stuff in there too. But I'm going to start like this. All right. And I want to show you again, this is me talking. So as I show you this stuff, you may or may not agree with what I'm saying. All right. But I'm going to go over here and under components, I'm going to go to navbar right there. And I'm going to click on navbar. And it says documentation basically for navbar. They tell you how it works. So you can read all that stuff. And some of it's a pretty good read. If you were going to be working on a website for someone and using Bootstrap, of course, you'd want to be reading this and going over it in a lot of detail. I will mention that you'll see a lot in these things that start with ARIA. And what that means is that's all stuff that is being put in as, for people who have an impairment, be it a sight impairment, be it a hearing impairment, or some other kind of impairment. But it goes along with the American Disability Act and a few other things. All right. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start working my way down. And again, they explain the different stuff that's in here, but I want to take a look and I'm going to grab, just so we have one, I'm going to look in here and you'll notice there's a bunch of examples. All right. But I'm just going to go back up and I'm just going to grab the first one that was here right there. All right. So when I get done in just a second, all I'm going to do is copy in this code that you see right here. And I'm going to put that into my body section. And when I get done, I'm going to have this right here, this whole thing. And it's even going to be green like this, etc. It'll be disabled, but just to show you. So I'm going to copy all this code to the clipboard. Then I'm going to go back into my bootstrap.html file. All right. And right now, the only thing that's in there is that script tag for my Bootstrap JavaScript. You always want that if you're going to leave it here at the bottom, right before your ending body tag. So I'm going to come right there and I'm going to paste in all that code that you just saw me copy to the clipboard. We're going to go over it in a moment. All right. But now I'm going to save this and I'm going to run this again in live server. And you can see how it's changed. All right. Now, part of the reason the coloring is the way it is my background color. Okay. And I wouldn't probably have that H1 there. I'd probably remove that, or move it down or whatever. This stuff isn't important. But you'll notice again, there it's green. This is called an outline button right here, that it just got a green outline until you hover over it. There's a search box in there. There is something in here that's disabled. All right. There is a drop down here. So in other words, this is if I had a sub menu. All right. There's a thing in here that's called link, one that's called home, and there's a thing in here that says navbar. Well, let's break them down. But before we do, I'm going to start by getting rid of, in fact, let's do this. Let's take that H1 just to show you this. And I'm going to remove it and I'm going to put it down after my navigation section. All right, so I moved it down after my navigation section. File, save all, and let's run this again then. And now you can see I've moved it down. So let's break this down and start taking a look at the stuff that's in here. All right, the first thing that you see right here says navbar. And basically what that is known as is that's a brand. Now, you're not going to keep the word navbar in there, but let's assume that I work for a company that makes widgets. All right. And I use my three initials and I've got JPS Widgets. That's the name of my company. Well, then I could change navbar there to JPS Widgets if I wanted to. Or if I had a company logo, I could change it to that. So again, I could come in here and up at the top where it says, somewhere up here, it'll say navbar there. I think that's it. So I could change that as an example to JPS Widgets. All right, incorporated, let's say. All right, now I can do it like that. And I'll save that. All right, and I will go back and take a look at it. All right, and you can see how it's changed. Now, what I'm showing you there is not a big thing. I get that. But again, what that could have been, if I wanted to, is if I had some kind of an image, I could put that in there. Now, be real cognizant of the fact that if you're going to put something like that in there, or if you are going to put something like that in there, you don't want to put in a humongous image, because then it's going to look really weird, and your nav bar here is going to be taking up a lot more area than you'll want it to. All right, but there's ways around that, and we'll talk about all this. Also, just because it pretty much is standard that when you do this, all right, what you'll want there, whenever you click on the brand, you'll want to go to your home page. which for me is bootstrap.html. Remember, I changed it. And let me do a view word wrap here just so you can see everything. Okay. Now there's a lot of different stuff in here. Okay. And you'll notice the first thing that you'll see when we take a look is this is our nav section, but the first class we're putting in here is navbar. That is the Bootstrap navbar class that I just told you about. All right. This right here, this navbar expand large, is basically saying, and again, this is going to sound a little bit different for lack of better words, that when I'm at a large screen size and above, we want it to take up everything. And if you say, I don't get it, let's see if we can make you get it. All right, I'm going to take this and I'm going to shrink this down. Do you notice how this went away? It's still there, but this is what's called a hamburger menu. And if I click on the hamburger menu, all my stuff is still there. But what we told it was when we got to a large screen size, we told it to change from that hamburger menu back to a regular menu. All right. And there was really nothing special that I had to add to do that. In fact, one of the nicest things about this, all right, one of the nicest things about this is just the fact that so much of this is built in. All right. Now, the BG is for background. This is background body. Tertiary, I don't remember what that means. I should have looked it up. I'm sorry I did not. All right. One of the things that you're going to get to in here is virtually everything that we're going to do inside of anything. We're going to be using a lot of divs, and we're going to be using a class that's either going to say container or container fluid. What's the difference? Well, if I change this, you just saw what this looked like. Right here, you saw exactly what this looked like. Okay, so if I change that from container fluid to container and I save that, I think it's going to change. All right, you can see how it moved it over. All right, and you might say, well, who cares? Well, what it's doing is when it was a container fluid, we were telling it to use up 100% of our screen width. But when we just said container, we told it basically to center it inside of what we're working on. So again, when you look at this here, all right, and then if I go back and I change it again, and I add that fluid back in there, all right, and I save it, and then we come back and look at it, you can see exactly how it's changed. All right. And one thing, hopefully you noticed, I'm going to do this one more time. I'm trying to purposely go through this slowly because this is something new. All right. But notice the word hello world and see exactly where it is. All right. If I go back into here and I remove that again, and I go back into here, what didn't change? The placement of hello world. Because everything that was in that container, all the stuff in that container, that was our nav bar. So the only thing that we are working with right there when we are putting that code in or leaving that code out is we're just affecting the nav bar itself. All right. So this div right here, I believe, is going all the way down. Well, there's another div in here someplace. Right there. So this div that you see right here on line 17, div equal container fluid, goes all the way down to this div that's right here on line 73. So that's handling basically everything that you see inside of our nav bar. All right. So as we keep taking a look at it here, then let's keep going. Again, I already told you, this is the thing that's called navbar brand. This is the one that originally just said the word navbar on it. I changed it to JPS Widgets Incorporated. We could put whatever we wanted there. We could put an image there. All right. Okay. And by default, unless told otherwise, what is supposed to happen is, let's pretend for a minute I had multiple pages on this site. All right. When you click here, it should always go back to your home page. We will have this menu on every page of our site. I want to say that again. We will have the menu on every page of our site, and you should be able to be on any page of the site and click that and go ahead and click on the navbar brand, and it should bring you back to the home page. Again, that's just historically the way that it's been done. All right. I'm going to go back and I'm going to add that back in here again. Do a save and bring it back. Okay. All right. So let's keep going down. Now, then we've got this thing here. This is going to be probably amongst the things that you see in here that's the hardest to understand. So I'm going to try to break it down a little bit. All right. What this is basically doing in here is it's toggling our navigation. What the heck does that mean? You already saw it. You saw that when we reached a certain size, that our navigation bar collapsed, so to speak, and was replaced with this hamburger menu. All right. And really, what you see in here all the way down pretty much through here, this is all working in unison with each other. So let's look at it. Again, you'll notice in lines 24, 25, and 26, there's a bunch of ARIA stuff that's in there. Now, most developers, if they go in and code this stuff themselves, I shouldn't say most, many developers leave that stuff off. You're best off getting used to putting all that stuff in, all these ARAI things. Again, it's done for accessibility, but it's just recommended that you use it. All right. Then, so notice on line 20, it says here, it's actually line 19. There's the beginning of our button tag, line 29 it ends. So it's 10 or 11 lines long. What's the class we're using? Navbar toggler, to toggle the navbar, to show it or not show it. All right, we've got a button in here. When you see this BS, it stands for Bootstrap. Maybe you figured that out already. And it's basically saying that when we get to a certain size, what we want to do is we want that to collapse. All right. And what we want is the stuff that we want to show is going to be in an ID that's called navbar supported content. You can call that anything you want. It doesn't matter. But whatever you call it right there must be the same exact name that you use down here. All right, because this is where the ID is actually being defined. Here it's being referenced. Okay. And this name, if you are using ARIA, again, should be the exact same name as this name. This stuff is, by and large at least, going to be case sensitive. All right. So you should do it in a certain way. The way that this is done here right now is typically referred to as camel casing. So you'll notice we've got really three words in there: the word navbar, the word supported, and the word content. And navbar is all in lowercase. And then any word that precedes navbar or succeeds navbar, I guess, like supported and content, the first letter is an uppercase. That is camel casing. We're going to use camel casing, all right, as well when we get into talking about JavaScript, and we've used it before as well. All right. Okay. Now, that's basically what you have to worry about in here. All right. Now, then we've got this span in here that says navbar toggler icon. Span, like what the heck is that? That's going to be that toggler icon. That's going to be that hamburger menu, that the kind of button that's got the 3 lines through it, that when we get to a certain width on our screen, it's going to change and it's not going to show our navigation bar anymore. It'll instead show that hamburger menu rather. And that's what they're talking about in here. All right. So then we go in here and this is what's actually building. This is what's coming in here and actually building our navigation bar. All right. Now, a few things, just so you see them, a few things that are in here. Okay. We've got here the nav bar. Okay. And you'll notice nav bar. So what is the class we're using? The class is nav bar nav. This is the name of a class, nav bar hyphen nav. We're also adding into this some ending margin, ME margin end auto. All right. MB. All right. And I don't remember what B is. It's not begin because there's an MS as well. And there's so many things. We're going to look at margins in a bit. All right. That are going to be in here. But what I want to show you is let's pretend for a moment that what we want in here, we're going to pretend that what we want is kind of the way we've been setting our stuff up. And what I mean is we're going to suppose we have 3 pages on our site. We've got a home page, we've got an about page, and we've got a contact page. Okay, so I'm going to change this. I'm going to leave this one here. That looks good because there's home. I'm going to change this one to about. And of course, I don't want it to go there. I want it to go to about.html. Now we haven't created that page. So if we click on it, it's going to break. And here we want it to go, typically it would go to index.html, but remember, since we had that first one, we created a new one called bootstrap.html. All right, so I've now got those two. Okay, then I've got this. So what's in here? Well, this is a drop down. This is that drop down that had a bunch of stuff inside of it. I don't even want to use that. So I'm going to get rid of all that. All right, so that's now out of here. All right, then I've got another one that's been disabled. I don't want it to be disabled. I'm going to change this to href equals, oops, try it again, contact.html. All right, so why does that look funky here? Let's see. Link. It's because I don't have one there. There we go. And instead of this, I'm going to put contact. All right, so you can see what I've done here. Hopefully, at least you can see what I've done here. So let's do a file, save all, and let's come back and look at it. And you can see what I've changed. I now have my brand, and then this home, about, and contact. I still have this search thing in here. And for right now, at least, I don't want that either. Okay, but I do want to mention before we get rid of that, which I'll do in a minute. This is a button, and you'll notice it's called an outline button. Okay, and you'll notice that when I hover over it, it changes, but when I don't, it basically kind of blends in. Well, what we're going to look at in a couple minutes are the different buttons, and there's different sizes and there's different colors that you can use as well. And we'll take a look at that in just a little bit. But for now, okay, I want, let's see. I don't want this search in here, but notice this is inside of a form right there. There it is. And you hopefully notice, what are they using in there? That would be Flexbox. So you can use Flexbox and you can use grid or a combination or neither when you are working with Bootstrap. Okay. Okay. So now I've gotten rid of that. All right. So file, again, save all. And I'm going to come back over to here. And now you can see what it looks like. All right. And if I don't like this, and what do I mean by this? Let me show you. Where are we? Uh, I believe I can come in here. This might be wrong. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think I can put in here navbar dark and then text dark. We're going to see if that works or not. If it doesn't, I'll check on it during the break. It did not do what I wanted it to do. I wanted that to get dark, and it didn't. You might say, well, why did you put the text dark? Because when you have a navbar dark, putting text dark actually makes the text light. I don't know why that is. That's just the way they've got it set up. All right, I'm going to get rid of both of these. Like I said, I'll try to look for it during the break. All right, so we've got all that stuff in here. We built this. Not really anything else new in there. All right, so let's go through and start looking at what else we can add to this. So right now, and again, we're just starting here. All right, so we're just starting here, and I'm not sure why that stuff is still not showing, but let's see. And if I screwed that up royally, then we'll just fix it during the break. So let's see. There it is. So my stuff is back. All right. Now, there's a way, again, I'll have to look it up later. I think I know what it is, but the way my luck's been going so far, it'll probably be wrong, but let's look in here anyway. So when we start putting in our stuff in here for these different items, all right, this says ME Auto. All right, I thought that if we put an ME Auto in here, that it would push everything off to the right, and it didn't. So we'll have to check on that as well. I've got an example that we're going to be going through, like I said, and it goes through all this stuff. So if I forget something, just please bear with me. All right, so let's take a look in here. It is 8:47. I'll go till 9 o'clock. We'll take a break. So we looked a little bit at navbar. We could, the order in which we do these things, of course, is totally up to us. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you in here, because this is the way usually these things are built. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you in here, let's see, is rather than components, actually, I thought it was under components. It's something called a jumbotron. So let's see, getting started. Let's let Google find it for us. Well, it says here in Docs 4, but so this is version 4. I don't really want that, but I'm going to find Jumbotron anyway. There it is. And this is a Jumbotron right here. It does not at all have to look like this, but I'm just going to copy everything from there, and I'm going to throw it into what I'm working on. Now, make sure when you do this, of course, we don't want this inside of our navigation bar, and we really don't need that hello world in there anymore either. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to paste that in right here. All right. So let's save this. And now let's again take a look at what we have. All right. And you go, oh, it looks a lot different. Yeah, it does. And don't worry about it. We're going to talk about all this stuff. We can make it bigger. All right. Etc. You can see now, okay, that was working. This should give us an error because we don't have an about file. And this should give us an error because we don't have a contact file. All right. And all that works. All right, now the thing I don't like is it's immediately going right away, and I've lost my other stuff in here, so we'll have to look at that. But I want to talk about jumbotrons right now. So let's take a look at that. All right. So let's go back and take a look at the actual code that we put in here. And that is right here. So notice there is a class called Jumbotron. All right. Then notice after that, we've got an H1 tag in there, and it says class equal display for. And then underneath that is a paragraph that says class equal lead. You may have already figured this out, but display for and lead are Bootstrap classes. In fact, when you look at this right here where it says hello world, the one that's here, there's the size, all right? And I believe you can go up to 6, but unlike with regular H1s, etc., I think the bigger the number you put here, I think the bigger the heading is going to be. So let's do a save all and look at it again. And maybe it got smaller. I don't know. All right. But there's, again, all sorts of different stuff that you can work with in here. You wouldn't typically put hello world in here. You'd put anything you wanted to put in here. All right. And you'll notice next where it says class equal lead, that's going to change the font type. You may again or may not be able to tell, but the font type here is much different than the font type here, for example. All right. And this is lead text. It's whatever font style they use in here, it's designed to stand out a little bit. All right. Now you might notice this doesn't really, in my opinion at least, that doesn't really look bold. So how do I put that in there? All right. How do I make sure that it is bold? Well, where I've got this right here, I've got class equal display for, I can put in here FW dash bold. And that means font weight bold. And if I do a save all and bring it back up again, you'll notice that now it is bolded. All right. Now, and if you said, hey, couldn't I just go back? I mean, couldn't I do this as well? Couldn't I go into my styles file that's right here? Couldn't I have gone in there and said H1 font weight bold? Couldn't we have done that? The answer is yes. But since you're working in Bootstrap, what you really should be doing whenever you can is take advantage of the built-in Bootstrap classes and only use your stuff, the stuff that you add to the Bootstrap classes when you have to. So even though, yeah, that would have worked to do it like that, the recommendation is to do it like this. And I could add it to this too if I wanted to. So again, I could say font weight, bold. All right. And you'll notice now they're both bolded. All right. Now that might be a little too much, but you hopefully at least are starting to get the idea. Okay. All right. And there's an HR. I don't even know how much we've done with HRs, but HR is horizontal rule. All right. That's that underline that gets put in there. The easiest way to show you what that does, because you can see it, that's this line right here. The easiest way to show it to you is to comment this line out. All right. And there it's gone. So again, it's one of those things that, for lack of better words, pretty much is done for effect. Okay. Now, also notice, if you would, that after for the class in there, it says MY4. Like, what the heck is MY? That's margin on the Y-axis. All right. And the 4 is basically, it's a built-in type of constant. So it said that when we use this, I guess I didn't save, so let me go back and save. it said that what we wanted in here was, rather than this coming right away, it said basically to give us some um, some margin in there. And again, just to show you, I'm going to grab that MY4, the whole class that's in here, and we'll remove it. We'll save, and then we'll look. And you'll notice that now it's pushed a lot closer, all right, than it was before. All right. So these, what you find when you start working in here is literally so much of the stuff that you end up doing in here is very, very, very aesthetic in nature, the way that it's set up. Okay. All right. Then we just got a quote regular paragraph that's in there. It's a regular paragraph. What I mean is the other one said P, and we had up here, wherever it was, class equal lead, and we added a bold to it. Let's just get rid of that bolding. We didn't really need that. All right. And here's just a thing with whatever our regular default font would be. Then we've got another P, all right, with class equal lead. But what is that? Well, here's one of the places where, in my opinion at least, Bootstrap kind of shines. Because what you're allowed to do is you can take a hyperlink and you can turn that hyperlink into a button by providing the button class for it. Virtually anytime you want to use a button, you'll have one or more classes, but the first one will be BTN. All right. And you'll notice it says here BTN primary and it says BTN large. All right. If we take a quick look, there's the button right there. All right. And if I remove this BTN primary and this BTN large, and we go back and take a look, all right, notice what happened. Doesn't even, it still is a button, but it's lost everything that we put in there for its aesthetics. Okay? Now, you might have guessed this too, just like there's a button large, there's also a button small. So it's smaller than the size that it was before. All right. And I want another thing I want to show you quick, because we're here right now and it's a good time to show you. And that is, let me go and save all and come back to here and to here and to here. And it doesn't matter if it's buttons, if it's text, what it is, but I'm going to go to buttons here once I find them. And you'll notice these are your different colors that are built into you being able to use things and to be able to use things inside of Bootstrap. So if you say BTN primary, you get that blue. BTN secondary, you get the gray, etc. All right. And there's even a light, again, that you can see. This is not the same as what we looked at before with outline, but there's a light that when you highlight it, and there's a dark. In fact, all of these, when you highlight them, they do get a little bit of hover effect. All right. And there's all sorts of different stuff that you can do with these. And these, again, these colors that we're seeing in here are not only used for buttons, although they're used a lot in buttons. But again, you can come in here and change these colors. All right. Then notice this is a button that you want to make look like a link, as opposed to what we just talked about, which was a link we wanted to make look like a button. All right. Now there's a whole, like I said, there's a bunch of stuff that's in here. All right. Here's these outline buttons that we talked about before. So every one of these that you saw up here has got a similar one that's down here with outline. Okay. The large button, the small button that I mentioned to you before, All right. It says you can even roll your own custom sizing if you use CSS variables. We don't get into that in here, but as they mention right here, you can go in and if you didn't like the size of a certain button, you could change that as well. All right. Now, I wanted to show you one more thing because it just came to mind right now. And I think that that's pretty good for right now. Notice you can have a block button, which takes up the whole, it's always the whole size, so to speak. All right. But I want to show you one thing and then we're going to take our break. And that is if I do bring this back up, all right, and I come into here, it isn't perfect. All right. I probably want to add some more margin, etc. in here. But when you look at it, it is responsive. All right. So right now, this is responsive without me having to do anything because Bootstrap is responsive by nature. Now, this doesn't look very good. In fact, give me a second. But the one that I'm going to show you tomorrow, that I'm going to build for you tomorrow, I'll show you what it looks like now. And it isn't great. I went back and I watched that 48-minute presentation, the Bootstrap Crash Course by Brad Traversy, and I took a lot of his ideas. There's still a couple things I need to change in here, but this is it right now. All right. And again, it's not much. All right. But what you'll notice is when we take a look at it and shrink it down, this is one thing I still have to move that over, but it's responsive. All right. And there wasn't really a lot of special stuff that I had to do. I've got my menu again, why me, what I teach, portfolio, contact, etc. All right. And it is, like I said, it's responsive. And when we hit a larger size, it comes back to here. So this is what we're building toward. And this is what we're going to be doing tomorrow. It's got an accordion in here. All right. And I'm going to go over all this stuff with you tomorrow. But it is 9:02. Let's take a break until 9:15. And then when we come back, all right, when we come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few of the other things that are in here under Get Bootstrap, and we're going to take a look at those. I'm only going to go till probably 10 or 10:30 today. All right. I want to do that today and tomorrow so that if any of you still needed time to work on your chapter 11 through 15 homework, I'm giving you time. It's 9:03. I'll see you back here in 12 minutes. All right, it is 9:15, so I'm going to start back up. I'm going to make a couple changes in here and see if it works. I'm not sure what this background body tertiary is doing. So I'm going to put this as navbar expand large. Then I'm going to put in BG dark, which should turn my background dark. Then I'm going to say navbar dark. And then I'm going to say padding on the y-axis, so a little bit, 3. And then finally, I'm going to say fixed top. And let's see what that does. Then we'll go back and take a look at everything. There it is. Nope. There it is. All right. So I'm still not sure what I lost there, but we'll have to figure that out. But notice now the way that this is set up. In fact, I think my text, well, we'll see it. But when you look in here, hard to tell right now because there's not a lot of content in here. But by saying PY3, I put some padding around this, around my y-axis. All right. So it looks a little bit nicer. Maybe it's too chunky and I'd want to change that to a different number. But that isn't even the point here. I've made the nav bar dark and I've affixed it to the top of the page. So even if I had a whole bunch of stuff in here, all right, as I scroll down, this is not going to move. Okay. All right. A couple other things that I wanted to run through here and talk to you about. Okay. Now, you saw this. We came in here. You've already seen it. We came in and we created this Jumbotron. And I said that it's not necessary that you create one. Quite often you see a Jumbotron in there, but again, it is not at all mandatory that one be in there. I'm just going to leave it in there for now so we've got something in here. And then down below that, I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to put in, I'm going to go down to carousel. All right. And how a carousel works, I think most people get it. So there's first slide, second slide, third slide, etc. So you can get it to move all the way through. So I'm going to just go and grab all that HTML. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. And I'm going to come into here. I'm on line 65 and I'm going to paste that in. So let's run it, see if it does work, and then go back and kind of dissect it as we've been doing here. All right, so go back to here, close mine. All right. And right now it doesn't find these pictures, which is why it's doing this, but it is going. All right. It actually is going through there. So let's see if we can find something. All right. In fact, let's see if we can do this. Again, probably shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but I'm doing every bit of this off the top of my head right now. So let's see. Grab some pictures of rank in here. And let's see, we'll grab, we can grab that one. And we'll put in here, Rankin West. I think that's the way they refer to it. We used to be Rankin Wentzville, and I think now it's Rankin West. Let's grab a couple more. That one. And we'll put in Rankin St. Louis. And we'll put in one more. It's North St. Louis. I don't know what that, I've never even seen that one before. Oh, this is the Troy one. Okay, we'll try that one. And we'll put down there Rankin Troy. All right. And then we'll come back to here and where we're putting in these right now. So notice right now, source equals. That's one of the reasons this isn't working. It's got source equal dot, dot, dot. So we'll put in here images slash, and we'll put in St. Louis first. All right. And we'll put an alt tag in there and we'll say Rankin St. Louis campus. And then we'll do this one next. And we'll put in Rankin West. And I'll put in Rankin Wentzville campus. And finally, we'll put in the last one. And that was Rankin Troy. All right, so file save all. And let's go take a look at it again then. All right, now it looks funky right now. It all has to do with the size of your images. All right, so they look a little grainy, but the point is this. All right, I think at least you would all agree that didn't take much work on my part. All right. And we're going to go in and we will talk about how you make these look nicer. I just don't want to get into that right now. I wanted to give you kind of an overview of the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing. All right. And again, not very hard to come in there and do that. And there's different types of carousels that you can put in. All right, there's the one that has the three dots at the bottom so that you can click on the dots to make it go. There's another one, I believe, that you can set a timer for it. So like every 5 seconds or whatever, it'll change. So like I said, there's just a lot of different ways that this can be done. Now, I was going to try something and I could be totally off here, but I wanted to try it anyway. And I think that part of the reason that looks as bad as it did right there, not there, right here, is I think that was a very small, those were very small images. So let's look. 300 by 168, etc. So they're all about the same size, but they're not a big size. So I'm going to come in here and open them with paint. And what I wanted to see is if I manually resize these. So I'm going to come in here and make this 900. And it doesn't look as grainy to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but let's even see if I make it at 1200, what it does. All right, that is starting to look grainy, so it's going to pretty much look the same. So I'm not going to change it. But what we'll get to is that you can pull pictures off the internet, all right, and have them manually scale. There is like an image 100%, etc. I found that when I work in here, sometimes the stuff that works really well with standard CSS, it's a little harder to get it to work with Bootstrap. That's my opinion for whatever that may or may not be worth. All right. So let's close a few of these things. Oops, well, that was the one I wanted, I think, but I'll keep that open. There we go. All right. And again, I'm not going to run through everything that's in here. That would be foolish, for lack of better words. I wanted to show you the accordion. That's one I used. All right. And it's pretty simple. If we go down, I'm going to give the same one that I used, which was an accordion flush. It's kind of neat. You can make things automatically appear and disappear. You're going to learn how to make this same accordion in a couple weeks using jQuery. All right. You can start to draw your own conclusions then over which one is better. All right. So I'm going to again grab all this code. It's right here. So I'm going to grab all that code, copy it rather to the clipboard, come back down into here, wrong one. All right. And under what we've just been doing, so right up above my script, I'm going to paste that in as well. Now it's just all garbage text, but we could again save this to make it say whatever we wanted it to say. And when I come back to here, we now have an accordion. And the key thing to tell you here, the key takeaway, and I got to make my screen bigger. There it is. The key takeaway is we basically have been getting this stuff by doing a lot of dragging and dropping. And that is, in my opinion, for whatever my opinion is or is not worth, one of the advantages of using a package like Bootstrap. All right. Just a couple more that I want to mention, and we'll go on. Another one that you'll end up using quite a bit are what are referred to as cards. All right. So here's a card right here. In fact, I use cards in the example I'm going to go through with you tomorrow. All right. And I use something that looked like this. You put an image there. You've got a title for a card. You've got some card text and a button. Boom. You put that in here like this. So I'm going to copy that and bring that in here as well. In fact, let's put in, hopefully that'll work okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to put in 3 of them. Right? And then we'll go back and take a look at what we have here. And here's our cards. All right. Now you might say, well, yeah, that's all fine, but wouldn't it have been a lot nicer if we had, excuse me, if we had put that in and said that what we wanted in there was, well, I don't know, maybe we wanted there to be a certain number of columns, etc. And the answer, yeah, I mean, at least I think, yeah, it would have looked a lot better like that. All right. But you can set that up as well. All right. And tell it exactly how many rows and how many columns you want. All right. So when we do that, if you take a look at what's in here right now, as always, it may not appear, but there's a method to my madness. All right. And when we start to look in here, we've got this div class equal card. You can see that. All right. But one thing we don't have in here, and I'm going to put it in right now, just so you can see it, is this really is not right now. This document that we're creating is really not HTML5 compliant. And what do I mean by that? Well, we really could have come in here, and I could do it in all of them, but I'll just do it here. I'm going to put in a section tag right here. All right. And then for the end of my section tag, I'm going to go down right before my script and I'm going to put that in. So I now have that section tag here and then at the bottom. And I'm going to take all this stuff and I'm going to move this over. Now, that if I run it now, it's not going to look any different. Just so you know, it's not going to look any different. But let's start adding a few things to see if we can make this look better. So I'm going to come in here and say class equals P5, and that's padding 5 all the way around. All right. Let's say background light, text dark. All right. And we would put in some kind of an ID in here. I don't know what. All right. But we probably would put something like that in there. Okay, that's the first thing. Then the next thing is we want to come in here and we're going to put in a couple more divs. All right. The first one is we're going to say div class equal container, because virtually any time you want to take whatever it is you're working with and be able to grab it and work on it as a unit, which is what we want to do here, you put it into, all right, you put it into a container. All right. Again, is it mandatory? No. But doing it this way is going to make it much, much easier for you to work with. All right. Now, so I've got a container and then I've got my card class. Let's put in a little bit more in here. All right. So I'm going to put in yet another div. Now, hopefully it'll start to make sense. Okay. And I'm going to say in here, class equal row. We want to put all these things into the same row. And I'm going to say cols 3. We want 3 columns in our row. All right. We want a gap between each one of size 4, and we want these to be centered. Again, it's getting there. It's not perfect yet, but it's getting there. All right. And again, I'm going to take that div. Okay. And it's just about there, believe it or not. It's not quite there yet. And I don't know why I've got this one here. Thought I moved that. All right. What you'll find a lot of people end up doing is they start putting comments at the end of their divs because you start getting so many divs. It gets a little hard to figure out where one starts and another one, where one ends and the next one starts, etc. All right. So let's see. We've got all that stuff. We've got our row. Let's come in here and put in then, let's put in an H1 and we'll say class equal text dark. Now we could have used that primary if we wanted it to be that blue, secondary if we wanted it to be that green, danger if we wanted it to be red, warning if we wanted it to be kind of a cross between yellow and like a light orange, etc. So there's a lot of stuff we can put in here. And I'm just going to put in my heading. It's a stupid thing to say, but I want to put something in there. All right. All right. And then finally, right before we come in and start doing these in here, all right, I've got in here what? I'm going to grab all this and just move it over so you can see it. What we have in here then is what? Well, we've got a div class equal card, and we're just manually putting in some width in here so it looks better. Then we're going to have an image. So right now it says ... so it's not going to show anything. All right, there really is no image in here yet. All right, but we have a title, we'll have a card. So for instance, if I came back again and did just what we did before, and I'll come in here and say images / Rankin, let's say West. All right, and for the alt, I'll put Rankin, Wentzville. All right, and I came in here for a title and I said Rankin, Wentzville campus. I'll just leave it Rankin, Wentzville. And for in here, we'll put down the Rankin, Wentzville campus opened in about 2011. I don't know when it was. It was something like that. All right. So now we're coming in here. We've got, after our H1, we want one more thing in here. And if we got rows are made up of columns. So I'm going to put in one more div here, and I'm going to say class equal col MD. And I don't expect at all you to understand what MD means because that's what we're going to do next. All right, I'm going to grab every bit of this and move it over. All right. And then after all of that stuff that we put in here, I think that's where we'll end that div. All right. And what's going to happen in here, I may have screwed it up, but the point is, well, let's take a look and see what it looks like. It may be terrible. When we do the one tomorrow, since I've got it done already, it'll look much better. There you go. So there's the first one. So you can see I put in my heading. I'll show you how to center that in just a minute. All right. These are a little bit too wide, so I'm going to make them more narrow so all three will fit in here. But you can see I've got a picture, and I can go in and play with padding. I can play with margin, etc., and fix all that stuff up. All right. Let's just do a little bit of that right now, just again, so you can see what's going on here. All right. So where it says my heading, and I've got text dark. All right. Well, what if I put in here text center? Just that. And I go back and look at it again. Well, now my text is centered. I mean, again, that should be pretty obvious. All right. And then where we came in and we said 18 rem for the width, let's try knocking that down to about 12 rem. All right. And we'll knock this one down to 12 rem as well. And we'll knock this one down to 12 rem to see if we can. This is just the width of it. So we're seeing if we can make all three of them fit together. All right. And there they are. Now we need to put more of a gap in there. We need to bring the other stuff in, but hopefully what you can see is how we're able to bring in a semblance of order in here. All right. And now when we do this and it gets small enough, notice what happens. It goes to one column, and first it goes to two columns, and then it goes, when we get it to a certain width, to three columns. How did all that stuff happen? Let's take a look at that right now. All right. This is one of the key things to being able to understand what's going on in here. All right. So as soon as I find it, I know it's in here. There we go. Breakpoints. All right. Now notice what it says. Breakpoints are the building blocks of responsive design. Use media queries to architect your CSS by breakpoints. What does that mean? That means that you still may want to, or in some cases almost have to use media queries. But one thing that you're able to do using Bootstrap is you are really able to incorporate a mobile first type of design. All right, so let's keep going here. Now, I don't expect this to make a lot of sense, but hopefully after I go over it, it'll at least make some sense. All right. You remember when we put the column there and we put column MD, if you remember that, I just put that in, MD. What that meant was, all right, we wanted it to be a certain size when the width was 768 pixels or above. All right. But when it was 767 or less pixels, that was why you saw it stacked one on top of the other. So these are your 6 major breakpoint candidates, so to speak, in Bootstrap. Now, I don't think I've ever done anything with the extra small. I'm just telling you, and I believe that's actually fairly new. All right. But the small will typically handle phones of any size. The medium typically is used for working with tablets. All right. The large and the extra large, typically, those end up working with either a laptop or a desktop. And the extra, extra large, you can use, for example, if somebody is showing something on a projection screen or whatever. But these are the breakpoints. So what you'll see in here is when you want to change the size, when you reach a certain width, you can use something SM or MD or LG or XL, or, and again, I've never used XXL. All right. Now, the reason this becomes important is it says each breakpoint was chosen to comfortably hold containers whose widths are multiples of 12. And if I go over to containers here, you'll notice we see the same stuff. All right. But what you'll start to see in here, I thought they showed it. Maybe it's in the next one. Maybe it's in here. All right. Is again, this works off of there being 12 columns in a row. So in this example right here, each one of these columns is taking up a width of 4, 4, 4, and 4, and that's giving us 12. All right. But if you look, and I thought there was another picture in here. There we go. All right. So here are 2 of them where each of them are taking up 6. There's 3 where each one are taking up 4, etc. All right. So if I were to grab this code that you see in here, you'd see it look like this. Now, that works, and it works just fine. But when you reach a certain width, if you don't start accounting for the fact that you're working on a different size device, it's going to look pretty darn awful. So if I grab this code that you see right here, all right, and I copy it to the clipboard, let's put that down on the bottom here, right before our script tag. All right. And we'll save, and then let's go run this again. So there it is. Now, again, I realize it doesn't look very good, but it's showing you that this one is centered here and here, and these are centered a third of the way, 2/3 of the way, etc. over. And when we start doing this, and we start changing our screen size, well, that's what's going to happen when we don't tell it that when it reaches a certain width, that, for example, you want it to go here, but let's just change that one that we just put in. Let's look at just changing this first one that's in here. All right. The one here that says 1 of 2 and 2 of 2. So right there. All right. We've got class equal col. All right. And let's try putting in here MD. I believe I'm doing that right. And if I'm doing it wrong, again, the one that we look at tomorrow, we'll have a much better example of what I'm giving you than what I'm giving you right now. All right. No, I still didn't like it. I thought that it's the right thing. I'm just putting it in the wrong place. Look in here. 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3. It's doing the best it can, but there's no way that it can show all of this in that small of a device. So what we really want to have happen here, what we want to have happen is that. All right, we want it to start splitting up. Now, I thought it was col-MD is what we put in there, because I believe I had put that in one of the examples that I'm using, but for some reason, it doesn't like it. And that's okay. What I'm trying to get across to you right here, 2 things. First of all, I should have went back and looked at the documentation before this morning, but more than that, I want you to start figuring out certain things in here, such as Bootstrap is meant to work with devices of any size, and you have control over how you want things to look at any device dimension. Again, the fact that these containers have widths that are multiples of 12. So in other words, if you really wanted to set something up like that, and you wanted to use the entire screen, you could have 12 things on one row in a screen. Now it would look very pushed together, but you could do that. All right. Or, as an example, instead of putting 12 in one, you could put 6 on each one and then have it over 2 rows, or 4 in each one and 3 rows, etc. All right. And when you're working with this, okay, so 12 is the magic number. So what if you have 13? Well, then by default, typically that 13th one will be pushed over into a new row. All right. Everything works off of working with 12. Now, they do mention in here too, we don't get into SAS in this class, but basically what SAS allows you to do is treat CSS as though it was a programming language rather than a styling language. You can create variables and you can do a lot of other stuff with it. This is one of those things, if you decide once you graduate that you want to go down the route of becoming a web developer, this would be a great place to start taking a look at stuff. All right. So I've already mentioned again the containers. Okay. Again, as we talked about, The default container class is responsive, fixed width. All right, meaning that it's max width changes at each breakpoint. Well, did we do that in ours? Did we have a div class equal container in the one that we just looked at? All right, we did. All right, and it wasn't splitting exactly the way I thought it was, but it was splitting. All right. There's the responsive stuff, and you can add more than one of these. All right. So it says their div class equals 100% wide until this. Maybe that's where I wanted it, was the MD was on there. All right. Still isn't splitting the way I wanted to. All right. But we will go over an example tomorrow, I promise, and I will take a look at this tonight as well. All right. I want to finish this up for what I wanted to go through today, though. You'll look in here and you'll notice columns. All right, we've started to look at these a little bit and notice they talk about, okay, it says to change the vertical alignment. So you can do things that at least are more similar to what we worked with Flexbox in here as well. You can use regular Flexbox in here. All right. There is a type you can use of Flexbox, or you, as it says, you can use grid. All right. So it's not that this stuff goes away. All right. It's just that you're using these and you're using these in conjunction with Bootstrap. All right. So there's a lot of other stuff that you can do in here. For instance, and we'll look at some of this. If you want to create a table, all right. So I can come in here and do this. I just want to show you a couple things about this. And what I'm going to do for now, at least, is I'm going to get rid of, there's way too much text in here right now. So I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff that we put down towards the bottom here. All right. And then we'll add this in here. So this is a table. There won't be anything in here that's a surprise to you. And there's our table. So you get a certain amount of stuff that's built in by default when you work with a table. What do I mean by that? Well, if I come back in here, notice when you have a table, you say class equal table. That's a Bootstrap table class. If I remove that, just remove that, and we go back and look at what we just had, you can see how much it changed. All right. So just by adding that particular thing in there. All right. I believe, maybe I'm wrong. I think is a table striped. We're going to find out right now. And you can see that every other row is a little bit different color. And the color doesn't look that great is because that doesn't work well with blanched almond, which is what I'm using for the background. But there's a bunch of different stuff that you can put in for this as well. And this does typically expect you're going to have the T head in there, the T body, all right, at a minimum, and we could have put a T footer in there as well. All right. So the idea is what I'm really trying to get across in here is most of the stuff that's in here, we've already looked at. We haven't done it in accordance with Bootstrap, but we have done it. All right, let's take a look quickly at one more. And that is, let's go over here to forms. We'll go over to the overview. There we go. And I don't know, let's see. Not maybe my favorite form, but we'll use this one right here. We'll make some changes to it. All right. So I'm going to grab that. And again, let's get rid of this table. We don't really need it. We'll get rid of the accordion as well. That's way up here. Heck, let's just get rid of the carousel too, because it's just pretty ugly, to be honest with you. We'll keep the Jumbotron so we have something in there. Okay, let's make sure I didn't screw anything up. All right, so that's all we've got in there right now. And let's go paste that in. Okay, so just by pasting this in, hopefully at least, we've created a form. All right, but there's a couple things I wanted to show you about that. So let me save it first and look at it and see if it did make a form. And there it is. Well, one thing you'll notice right away is by default, so again, unless told otherwise, these areas for the form are block areas. What I mean is they're taking up the entire width of the screen. Can we change that? Yeah, we're going to make a nicer looking form tomorrow. But I just wanted to show you this, that this is another example of when you use this. This is probably the most important part. Class equal form label, class equal form control, right there. All right. And you'll notice this doesn't look that different from some of the forms that we have built ourselves. We're not seeing the form tag in here. I don't care. But the point is, when you look at this, there's labels and there's inputs. All right. So some of that stuff, at least, is really not new. There's a better one in here. I don't remember where it was that I've used in the past. But you'll see all the different stuff you can come in here and start adding. All right. There are a lot of developers who do almost nothing in their regular CSS, that everything they need is here inside of Bootstrap. Okay. And it's interesting because Bootstrap has been around for a while. I think it was 2014. So it's like about 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. There is another one up here that's very popular, and that is called Tailwind CSS. It works in many ways. It works very similarly to Bootstrap. Of course, it's not identical, but a lot of the stuff is very similar. There's another one that's not exactly the same thing that you can use that's called Material UI, for Material User Interface. So there's a bunch of these things that you can use. All right. So I'm just wrapping it up right now. What I plan on doing tomorrow, as I already mentioned to you, is tomorrow I plan on coming in and building this. All right. You're welcome to join along when you do that. And if you don't want to, you're welcome to watch me do it. And when I get done, I will save what I'm working on. All right. I'm going to literally start from a blank slate and do all this stuff. And you'll notice when you look on here, this literally does open up my resume, and it opens it up in a new window, etc. The accordions work. They've got information about me in the past, etc. I did put links on these. So if I click here, it goes in, onto the Mozilla page into it, and it's in a new tab. Here it goes into a thing from Microsoft on C# fundamentals. This is actually stuff that we go through in these classes, which is one of the reasons I put that stuff in there, just so you could see it. And these I didn't have linked to anything. All right. But what I plan on doing tomorrow is this. And then when we get done with it, all right, showing you how you can actually save this out to GitHub pages. In order for us to do that, there's going to be a few little tweaky types of things that we're going to have to do. It's not hard. I did ask Mr. Gudmiston, my counterpart at the St. Louis campus. I asked him, I said, what are you doing now? I said, it doesn't appear as though the IWT that built the server that we have at St. Louis is up and running anymore. And he said, it's really not. He said, I have people use GitHub pages and put it right out to their GitHub account. That's where I have them save their website. So that's what we're going to do. All right. And I thought there was one more thing, but let me check one last thing, and then I promise we're done for the day. Where are we here? Oh, I thought there was something in our book about Bootstrap. Maybe there isn't. All right. I know that in the older version of the book, they had something about Bootstrap in there. I will tell you again, and I have mentioned this before, that as we go through this tomorrow, I'm basing much of what I did off of this crash course that Brad Traversy did. And it's not short, it's an hour and 20 minutes long, so it's 80 minutes. But there's a lot of really good things that are out here. All right. I mean, W3 Schools has got a Bootstrap 5 tutorial, and it's not bad. I started going through it, and they show you things like, here's an example, more of what I wanted to show you earlier, so you can see what it looks like right there. Whoops. You can see what it looks like right there, and then you can see what happens as you move it down. All right, and how it goes to just one column, etc. And it's pretty well done. I have not looked at it lately, but I know I did. I've used it in the past, but it goes through everything, and you can see there's so much in here that it really. I'm just trying to hit some of the high points today. All right, I'll bring this up tomorrow. We'll look at a couple of the other things, but here they have a better Jumbotron example. I wish I'd have thought of using that one. All right, because that would have probably been better than the one that I used. All right, so that's what I had for today. If you get a chance, take a look through this W3 Schools Bootstrap 5 tutorial for tomorrow. We'll pick it up there tomorrow, and I will build my version of my electronic portfolio from scratch. And when I get done, I will deploy it out to GitHub pages. All right. So unless you have any questions, that's what I had for today. All right.
No, I think I just need more examples of this for tomorrow. So,
like I said, we do it tomorrow, and we'll do it real slow. All right. And you'll be able to watch me do every step in here. And even when we do steps, I'm not going to like type out 10 things for one step. I'm going to type in 2 or 3. We'll look at it, then we'll add 2 or 3 more and look at it. And then hopefully it'll start making more sense.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks.